it says, when my second teacher, whose name was Jan J.N. Kiapuso. If you look up any biography of mine, you'll find all out about that. And stories about my first lessons with him. Well, anyway, it was he who discovered that I could memorize a fugue in almost minutes. And he himself had done a lot of specialized work in Bach. So he was the one who immediately said, my God, girl, if you can do this, you should specialize in Bach. So that began special studies in that field and that period, as well as the standard pianistic repertoire, Beethoven and Brahms and Liszt and so forth and so on. Therefore, by the time I was 15, I was playing all Bach recitals in Chicago. And I had received a very good education from him in the approved style and so forth. And I had already studied the harpsichord, the clavichord, and the organ as well as the methods of the transcribers.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So I, was pretty professional by the time I was 16, which was when I arrived at the Juilliard School. Well, and I had a big Bach repertoire. In fact, they still tell the story. The students still come backstage after concerts and they say to me, is it true that when you played your auditions for the Juilliard, you said which prelude and fugue would you like to hear?
You gave them your choice.
That's right, they had a choice. Well, anyway, I went on finishing off the 48 as soon as I entered Juilliard. I had many of them. And shortly before my 17th birthday, I had this very special experience, which you can read in a lot of books.
Yes.
You may know about it. Do you know of it?
When you were studying the A minor Prelude?
Yes, what happened. Yes. Well, now, I had been very well trained, and the way I was playing Bach would have been absolutely improved. But this insight was so profound that it opened up a universe I didn't know existed. I'd never heard of anything like that before. I'd never heard anybody play like that. I'd never heard anybody talk about such ideas. And the result was, where I'd been learning 3 preludes and fugues between Monday and Friday, and a Beethoven sonata and a concerto movement and so forth, between Wednesday and Friday, I gave up everything else, and I could learn only 4 lines of the fugue. It took such a profoundly, absolutely fundamentally different way of thinking. The brain works differently, actually. And although I could play everything by that time, it was such a new physical technique that was required by my insight into the concept and the structure that it was like learning how to play an instrument all over again. It took me 4 days to learn 4 lines. No, 2 days to learn 4 lines. New brain activity, totally new finger activities.
Amazing.
And came in for my lesson on the Friday afternoon and said I had only 4 lines to play. And my teacher then, Olga Samarov, she was, knowing how much repertoire I brought in every week, said, had you been ill? And I said, no. And I told her what had happened to me and what I'd seen and perceived, and what I felt had to be done and what had to be done technically. It meant creating a whole new technique for playing the piano. And a whole new way of thinking, which I'd never known before, either of which. So I played the 4 lines for her, and she said, it's fabulous, it's marvelous. But she said, it can't be done, it's impossible. Well, you do 4 lines after, say, days of labor, but you just can't. It's the art of playing. It's impossible what you're talking about. Well, I felt I'd gone through a door into a whole new universe, and I was not going back through that door, even if my teacher said it's impossible. So I paid no attention to that, and I started to work out the whole mental concept, the whole perception into all the behavior structure and the sense of form, and create a whole new technique for playing the piano. And when I play Bach on the piano, I play the piano entirely differently from when I play any other composer. And this technique I can teach. I mean, it's so clear to me. I can teach, I can articulate it, I can lecture on it, and I can write books on it. I have never yet written a book on all these various ideas and works. I'm starting to write books now.
Wonderful.
And I know that Gould has said I have been his greatest influence, and he's told everybody that, and he said it repeatedly. And it was certainly very nice of him to be so honest about it and so clear. And, of course, I could hear. I could have heard whether he said so or not. I could have heard everything, that had come out from my work. He did not know the roots.
I don't think he was a scholar.
He didn't know why I was doing things the way I was doing them. I knew why, as a result of my scholarly work, result of my early life with harpsichord, clavichord, organ, piano, all these different instruments, and the instruments of the time and the concepts of the time. He didn't know these things, and we know he didn't know really how to play a harpsichord or an organ. So, and he didn't know my concepts. So he could, the influence was enormous.
Yeah.
It was true. It's true.
He didn't know the treatises either.
Yes, I see. Well, it's clear. One can hear that. So he took what he could get from my playing and put that into his playing, and but it didn't have the body below it and the roots or the perception of the concept of form, or the understanding of what I was really doing with structure, and the understanding of what I was doing with the structure of performance. And that's very complex. And my playing is extremely dense and extremely complex. And in a sense, it's as complex as the music I play. And that's one of the big differences in the way I play Bach.
And the way other people play.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm saying this to you in a very simple way, but that's just a fact. And that was one of the points of of this labor of creation, was to match the myriad structures of the music to the technique. I mean, so that the technique was dealing with every myriad structure and all the complexity of it, as well as the integration of it. And that makes an extremely complex technique.
Sure.
And people don't play the piano that way.
No.
So, and this, of course, nobody has been able. I'll be with you in just a few minutes. I'm doing a little interview.
I'm a bit illegally parked, but I'm right over the front, so if you just come outside.
Oh, yes, all right. I'll be there in a few minutes. So, I don't remember what I was saying right now.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes.
Part of my route in the studying is to study the possibility of an oral transmission of style through the ages. I don't know if perhaps your teachers have some... Do you think there's some sort of oral link?
Nobody taught me what I do in Bach.
Nobody taught you
Nobody taught me what I do in Bach. Nobody taught me one iota of what I do in Bach.
Huh.
I'd had this lovely training, and
Yeah.
I accede with the greatest of joy to what this teacher, second teacher, Jan Kiapuso, gave me. And of course it was a kind of a background, introduced me to all the, I studied a great deal of the music, and I learned the instruments. Some of them I learned as a result of my own initiative.
Yes.
But from the age of just almost 17, when the whole universe, I walked into a whole new universe, nobody taught me one shred. I came in for my lessons to Olga Samarov, and she just sat there and listened. And in my second year, she said to me, after one of my lessons, she said, I have no right to accept the fees from the Juilliard for your lessons. She said, I have nothing to say.
That pretty well sums it up, doesn't it?
She would sit and listen, and now and then she'd make a suggestion or two, but it was all a little louder here, maybe a little softer here or something. But nobody taught me anything from that moment on in my whole work in Bach. And this has been done all myself. And of course I've continued to think and study and read and play all the instruments and conduct, work with singers and all media and contemporary media.
It seems that from my reading of different treatises and listening to your playing, it seems as though you've absorbed some of the aesthetics or the rules, I suppose.
Oh, yes. Oh, that, yes. Oh, well, I combine the two. I look into the music very deeply, the music itself, as you heard me say last night. And I look into the behavior of the structure very deeply. And I've thought a great deal about form, which is very, very important, and which musicians learn what forms are, but they don't think in the deeper sense of concepts and form arising in this way. They don't pay all that much attention to Plato and Aristotle's concepts of form and later concepts of form. These musicians don't do that, but after all, I feel this is intrinsic.
Yes.
So, of course I have studied embellishment since I was a child, and the embellishment is just in my blood and bones.
Yes.
And all the rules, I know the rules, I know thousands of exceptions,
Yes,
and
right.
that's all. But it's not only knowing in the usual sense in terms of information,
Yes.
but it's knowing in the Bible sense, in that I have absorbed it. It's part of me.
It just seems that listening to some of, your Goldberg record anyway, the on piano, your embellishments are beautiful. Like they just seem so beautiful. And it seems like, how can you, it's just a creative act, I think, rather than learning from the books.
Oh, well,
I
think this is one of the great troubles with Bach playing today, is because, firstly, not enough people do have enough information, even though there's a great deal to be had. Next, then the small minority that read books or take courses, hopefully take more than one or two courses, and really read books and try to study ornamentation. They apply it. They put it on top of the music. Some use a lot of it. It became more fashionable recently to use much of it, and then some use less of it, but it's always applied.
Yeah, on top of the...
Exactly. It's above the staff all the time. Even Donington, who has written these two recent, great tomes on... Well, he has a lot of sources. He quotes the sources, and that's marvelous. But he says embellishment is, you must do embellishment. He says that. But he says you have to add it to the music.
Yeah, rather than...
It's a totally incorrect notion of what that music is. With all due respect to Donington, he has no notion of what that music is in saying this is to be added.
Later.
This is the great difference between what I do and perhaps everybody else. And you hear it because apparently you have knowledge and you can perceive that it isn't just applied, like putting on happy birthday on a birthday cake.
Yeah, right.
For me, it is so intrinsic to the music and the way I recognize a symbol and its various possibilities. No one symbol can be played only one way. And then understand and study the context in which it appears. And then put all that together. That context has many, many levels of meaning. There's harmonic, there's rhythmic, there's melodic, there's contrapuntal. And you see, also, I find that people don't pay enough attention to all the different structures in which a symbol is involved. They study the books, they do it correctly, but to do it correctly is all wrong. And anyway, it isn't just a symbol outside the music, it is intrinsic. And, well, I'll be writing books on this, so if you have perceived what I'm doing, then I am very grateful to you, because it's so profound, actually, an experience and a perception and understanding that, to me, it's very meaningful. And I do know there are people, but they are in the minority, who begin to understand what I'm really doing. And
I've actually had a fair amount of study with South Indian music. I majored in ethnomusicology.
Well,
and ornaments
no
are
wonder
such
you're
a big
beginning
part
to
of it.
understand.
Yeah, after I studied Indian music and then I'm listening to your playing, I heard it differently.
That explains it. And that's why, quite a long time ago, I gave 2 lectures, one on embellishment in Bach in Indian music and in Chinese music. And when I really will be writing my books on, and particularly this on embellishment or involving that, I have to go back to India and China.
Yeah?
Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
And even to the Hebrew chant. No question. And now what you have said is absolutely hitting it right between the eyes. And you see, the Western culture hasn't the clue, at least the Western culture of the last 200 years, hasn't a clue about what embellishment really is. It's a word we don't understand. We use it wrongly, or we use it in a totally different sense in the last 200 years. More than 200 years, certainly, at least since...
The beginning of notation.
Well, we're using it wrongly, certainly, since about 1730-40. Bach was so out of date by the time he died in 1750 that we won't consider that date, though it's a convenient one, the mid-18th century. But the term embellishment has had an entirely different connotation. But up till the mid-18th century,
you think it
was an intrinsic mode. You can't think Indian music
without embellishment.
There is no music.
That's right.
It doesn't exist. And in China, it's the same way. And in the Hebrew chant, it's the same way. And in all the Asian music, it's the same way. For thousands of years, the unusual thing is the last 200 years, when all of a sudden there is no embellishment intrinsic in music.
I wonder why it changed, though. I wonder if notation was actually
of course, there's reasons.
Problematic thing.
No, there are many, many reasons, but I would have to be with you for hours to tell you. But there are concrete reasons why it changed. Oh, very clear reasons. Which involves gradual changes in whole modes of thought and form, in science and in philosophy and in literature and in music. And it's very clear, concrete reasons, which are very clear to me.
Right.
But I am so delighted to hear that you did study Indian music and you perceived this right away. But you wouldn't have perceived it, I think, if you hadn't. In my playing.
No, it was a change once I started Indian music.
Well,
6 years ago.
Well, that confirms always what what I've known for a long, long time. So, well, that's very interesting. I'm delighted to have had this talk with you.
Well, I'm more than delighted, and I really do appreciate your time. I really do.
Good. Why don't you give me your address and let me see your piece when you finish it?
Okay. Perhaps I should send it to you. Shall I take your address, or?
Yes, yes. And then I can put you on the mailing list and let you know when some of these things are out.
Okay, I have to find a piece of paper.
Oh, well, we can easily get that.
Paper in here?
I'll get some at the desk. Why don't we get a little slip there, which will be easy to put in my bag.
Okay.
Or I give it to you.
Okay. Well, here's a...
Well, let's exchange.
Okay.
I know who you are.
Okay. You can write your name.
Why don't you write it for me?
Okay.
You know my name.
Yes, this is true.
And it's 215 East 68th Street, New York City, 10021. That's right.
New York City.
10021. And you
Is the Turek Bach Institute still active?
Yes, yes, we're doing some, moving into little different areas now. But I can see that you get some information about the institution.
I'd love to. I'd love to. I really would. That would be wonderful. Well, that's fabulous.